The coffee maker gurgled to life at exactly midnight, just like it had every night for the past 3 months. Dr. Emma Cross stretched her arms above her head and watched the dark liquid drip into her favorite mug, the one with "World's Okayest Scientist" printed on the side. Outside the reinforced windows of Research Station Omega-7, the alien world of Kepler 186f was settling into its deadly nighttime routine. Most humans would have found the planet terrifying after dark. The Galactic Science Consortium had classified it as a Class 4 hazard zone specifically because of what prowled through its purple-tinted forests when the twin suns set. But Emma had volunteered for the night shift anyway. She actually preferred it this way. No chattering colleagues, no status meetings, no one asking her to explain why she needed 17 different rock samples from the same cave system. The station housed 12 researchers from 7 different species, all studying the planet's unique geological formations. During the day, they worked together in careful harmony, following strict safety protocols and never venturing outside without armed escorts. At night, they sealed themselves into their individual quarters and tried not to think about what was. Moving around in the darkness beyond their walls, Emma was the only one who stayed awake. Someone had to monitor the perimeter sensors, she reasoned. Someone had to make sure the automated defense systems were functioning properly. Someone had to watch for the warning signs that might indicate a breach in their carefully maintained security bubble. The truth was simpler than all of that. Emma just liked the quiet. She picked up her steaming mug and walked to the main observation deck. Through the transparent aluminum barriers, she could see the bioluminescent plants that dotted the landscape, glowing like Christmas lights in shades of blue and green. Somewhere in the distance, something howled, a sound that made most species' blood run cold. Emma found it oddly peaceful. Dr. Velton, the station's Aquarian commander, had questioned her decision to work nights. His species evolved from ocean predators, and even they were nervous about this planet's nocturnal hunters. The Shadowstalkers alone have killed 3 survey teams in the past decade, he'd reminded her during their safety briefing. They're apex predators with enhanced senses, natural camouflage, and intelligence that borders on sentience. Emma had nodded politely and signed the liability waivers anyway. She'd grown up in Alaska, where bears and wolves were just facts of life. She'd spent 5 winters at research stations in Antarctica, where a single equipment failure could kill you in minutes. A few oversized cats with extra limbs didn't seem like that big a deal in comparison. The perimeter sensors showed their usual readings. Motion detected in sectors 7 and 12. Probably the native deer-like creatures that grazed near the station's waste heat vents. Temperature anomaly in Sector 3. That would be the hot springs where some of the smaller predators came to drink. Everything normal, everything predictable. Emma settled into her chair and pulled up the geological survey data from yesterday's expedition. They'd discovered a new type of crystal formation in the deep caves, something that seemed to generate its own magnetic field. The readings were unlike anything in the standard mineralogy databases. She lost herself in the numbers, occasionally sipping her coffee and making notes about follow-up experiments. At 0300 hours, everything changed. The lights went out all at once, plunging the station into absolute darkness. The gentle hum of the air recycling system died. The soft glow of the computer displays vanished. Even the emergency lighting failed to activate. Emma sat perfectly still for a moment, listening to the sudden silence. Then the screaming started. Not human screaming, the station's automated alarm system designed to wake everyone in case of emergency, except it wasn't working either. The screaming was coming from the sealed quarters upstairs, where her colleagues had just realized they were trapped in the dark with no way to know if the station's defenses were still operational. Emma pulled out her flashlight, a simple LED model that had never failed her in 20 years of fieldwork. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating familiar equipment and furniture. She stood up, finished the last sip of her coffee, and headed toward the maintenance levels. The backup generator was located 3 floors down in a section of the station that most of the research team had never seen. Emma knew the route by heart. She'd explored every corridor and service tunnel during her first week, partly out of professional curiosity and partly because she'd learned long ago that understanding your environment was the key to surviving in it. The stairwell was pitch black, but Emma's flashlight showed her the way. Her footsteps echoed in the narrow space. Behind her, she could hear muffled voices, her colleagues trying to communicate through the sealed doors of their emergency shelters. Dr. Velton's voice was the loudest, shouting instructions in his native language to someone who couldn't hear him. The generator room was exactly as she'd left it during her last inspection. Banks of power cells lined the walls, connected to the station's main systems through a maze of cables and switching units. The backup fusion reactor sat in the center of the room, cold and silent. Emma ran her flashlight beam over the control panels, looking for obvious problems. She found the issue within minutes. A power surge from the main grid had triggered a cascade failure in the switching system. 3 different circuit breakers had tripped in sequence, each one designed to protect the others, but ultimately creating a feedback loop that shut down everything at once. The repair would be simple but time-consuming. She'd need to reset each system manually and bring them back online in the correct order. Emma set down her flashlight and got to work. The station's designers had been Thaxians, a species known for over-engineering everything. What should have been a simple power restoration procedure required her to disconnect 17 different cables, reset 4 separate computer systems, and manually restart the fusion reactor's control sequence. She was halfway through the process when she heard the sound of claws on metal, not the distant howling she'd grown accustomed to during her night shifts. This was close, inside the station, moving through the corridors above her with deliberate, predatory precision. Emma paused in her work, listening carefully. The footsteps, if they could be called that, were getting closer. 6 legs moving in perfect coordination, each step calculated, and silent except for the occasional scrape of razor-sharp claws against the station's metal flooring. She considered her options. The sealed emergency shelters were 3 floors up, and she'd have to get past whatever was hunting through the station to reach them. The communication array was offline, so she couldn't call for help. The automated defenses were powered down, leaving her completely exposed. Emma looked at her flashlight, then at the half-repaired generator system. She shrugged and went back to work. The power needed to be restored whether she was alone or not. And if something was going to eat her, at least her colleagues would have lights when they found her remains. The claws were getting closer. The sound stopped just outside the generator room. Emma kept working on the power cables, her flashlight propped against a control panel to free both hands. She could feel something watching her from the doorway, a presence that made the air itself seem heavier. The fine hairs on the back of her neck stood up, an ancient human instinct warning her that a predator was near. She didn't look up. Experience had taught her that sudden movements often triggered attack responses in wild animals. Instead, she continued reconnecting the power grid, humming softly under her breath. It was an old song her grandmother used to sing, something about flowers and sunshine that seemed absurdly cheerful in the current circumstances. A low growl rumbled through the darkness, not the kind of sound a human throat could make. This came from something with a much larger chest cavity, vocal, cords designed for communicating across vast distances. The growl held notes of warning, curiosity, and something that might have been confusion. Emma finished connecting the primary power coupling and reached for the next cable. "I know you're there," she said quietly, still not turning around. "But I'm kind of busy right now, so you'll have to wait your turn." The growling stopped abruptly. Heavy breathing replaced it, 6-lunged respiration that moved more air than any Earth creature could manage. The breathing grew closer. Emma could smell something wild and musky, like wet fur mixed with the metallic scent of old blood. Still, she kept working. A shadow fell across her workspace. Something massive was standing directly behind her, close enough that she could feel body heat radiating from its fur. Emma's flashlight beam wavered slightly as one of the creature's limbs moved past it, revealing a glimpse of midnight black claws that could probably cut through steel. Emma yawned, not from fear or stress, but because she'd been awake for 19 hours straight, and her body was running on caffeine and stubborn determination. The yawn was deep and genuine, complete with a little satisfied sigh at the end. The breathing behind her became irregular, almost stammering. Whatever was back there clearly hadn't expected that response. "Look," Emma said, reaching for the fusion reactor's restart sequence. "I get that you're probably supposed to be scary and all, but I really need to get the power back on. My colleagues are locked in their rooms upstairs and they're probably panicking. Some of them have anxiety issues." She initiated the startup procedure. The reactor began its slow warm-up cycle, filling the room with a gentle humming sound. Status lights flickered to life on the control panels, casting everything in a soft blue glow. For the first time, Emma turned around to see what she was dealing with. The Shadow Stalker was even more impressive in person than in the research files. It stood nearly 3 meters tall at the shoulder, with 6 powerful limbs that ended in retractable claws. Its fur was so black it seemed to absorb light, broken only by thin lines of bioluminescent patterns that pulsed along its spine and limbs. The head was distinctly feline, but larger than any Earth cat, with ears that could probably detect a heartbeat from across a room. The most striking feature was its eyes. They glowed with an inner amber light, reflecting intelligence and awareness, that went far beyond simple animal instinct. Those eyes were currently staring at Emma with an expression she recognized from her childhood. The same look her neighbor's dog used to give her when she did something unexpected, like offering it a treat instead of chasing it away from the garbage. "You're magnificent," Emma said, and meant it. "The photos in the database don't do you justice." The Shadow Stalker tilted its massive head, studying her with obvious confusion. It had probably stalked hundreds of prey animals in its lifetime, and not one of them had ever responded to its presence with casual compliments. Emma noticed something else in the improved lighting. The creature was thinner than it should be. Its ribs were visible beneath the dark fur, and its movements had the careful economy of an animal that hadn't eaten well in some time. There were also scars along its flanks, old wounds that spoke of territorial fights or encounters with other predators. "When did you last have a decent meal?" she asked, the same tone she might use with a stray cat that had wandered onto her porch back home. The question seemed to catch the Shadow Stalker off guard. It took a step backward, then forward again, as if it couldn't decide whether to flee or attack. Its bioluminescent patterns began pulsing faster, creating a light show that would have been beautiful under other circumstances. Emma turned back to the control panel. The fusion reactor was almost ready to come online, and she needed to coordinate the power restoration sequence carefully to avoid another cascade failure. "I'm going to get these lights back on," she said. "Then I'm going to make some coffee and see if there's anything decent to eat in the kitchen. You're welcome to stick around if you want." She threw the final switch. Throughout the station, lights flickered back to life. Air recycling systems resumed their quiet humming. Computer displays came back online, showing normal readings across all major systems. Somewhere above them, sealed doors were probably opening as her colleagues realized the emergency was over. The Shadow Stalker flinched when the lights came on, its pupils contracting to thin slits. But it didn't run. Instead, it sat back on its haunches, looking remarkably like an oversized house cat that had just knocked something off a table and was waiting to see if anyone had noticed. Emma packed up her tools and headed for the exit. "Kitchen's this way," she said over her shoulder. "Hope you're not vegetarian." The predator followed her, It moved with surprising grace for something so large, its 6 limbs working in perfect coordination. Emma could hear its claws clicking, softly against the metal flooring with each step. They passed through the station's main corridor, where emergency lights were still flashing amber warnings. Emma stopped at the central control panel and canceled the alert status, switching everything back to normal operations. The Shadow Stalker watched this process with obvious interest, its head tilting as it observed her interaction with the human technology. The kitchen was a standard consortium design: industrial food synthesizers, protein storage units, and preparation, surfaces sized for multiple species. Emma went straight to the coffee maker and started a fresh pot. Behind her, the Shadow Stalker was investigating the room, sniffing at various pieces of equipment with obvious curiosity. The food synthesizer can handle most basic proteins, Emma explained, programming the machine for a large portion of synthesized meat. I think beef analog should work for you. High protein, easy to digest. The machine hummed to life, assembling a meal from its molecular components. The Shadow Stalker's ears perked up at the sound, and its nostrils flared as the scent of cooking meat filled the air. Emma plated the food and set it on the floor, then stepped back to give the creature space. There you go. Better than whatever you've been hunting lately, I'm guessing. The Shadow Stalker approached the plate cautiously, sniffing at the synthetic meat. Then, apparently deciding it was safe, it began to eat with the focused intensity of a truly hungry animal. Emma watched with satisfaction, sipping her fresh coffee. Above them, she could hear voices as her colleagues emerged from their emergency shelters and began checking the station's systems. Soon, someone would come looking for her to find out what had happened. They'd probably be very surprised to find her sharing a late-night snack with one of the planet's most dangerous predators. Emma wasn't worried about explaining the situation. After all, she'd simply done what any reasonable person would do when encountering a hungry animal in the middle of the night. She'd offered it breakfast. The Shadow Stalker finished its meal in less than 3 minutes, cleaning the plate with a tongue that was probably designed for stripping meat from bones. Emma refilled her coffee mug and settled into one of the kitchen chairs, watching as the creature explored the rest of the room with careful, methodical movements. It was clearly intelligent. Rather than randomly investigating everything, it seemed to be categorizing different types of equipment based on smell and function. It spent extra time examining the food synthesizer, apparently fascinated by the idea that meat could appear from a machine without any visible hunting involved. Pretty neat, isn't it? Emma said. Molecular assembly from base proteins. The consortium developed it for long-range exploration missions. Not as good as the real thing, but it keeps you fed. The Shadow Stalker looked at her when she spoke, its amber eyes following her lips as if trying to understand the connection between the sounds and their meaning. Its bioluminescent patterns had shifted to a slower, steadier pulse. What the research files described as a sign of contentment or relaxation. Footsteps echoed in the corridor outside, heavy Thaxian boots moving quickly toward the kitchen. Emma recognized Dr. Velton's distinctive gait. The Aquarian commander always walked like he was fighting a current. "Dr. Cross?" Velton's voice called out. "The systems show you restored power from the generator room. Are you injured? Did you encounter any—" He appeared in the doorway and stopped mid-sentence. His large, fish-like eyes went wide as they took in the scene. Emma sitting calmly with her coffee while a 3-meter-tall apex predator investigated the kitchen equipment. The eye. Shadow Stalker turned toward the new arrival, its posture shifting slightly. Not aggressive exactly, but alert. Its ears swiveled forward, and the bioluminescent patterns along its spine brightened. "Oh," Velton said quietly. "I see." Emma stood up slowly, keeping her movements casual. "Dr. Velton, meet our unexpected visitor. I don't think it means any harm, just curious about the station." Velton took a careful step backward. His species had evolved from ocean predators, but they were ambush hunters that relied on stealth and surprise. The Shadow Stalker was built for direct confrontation, and it outweighed the Aquarian by at least 50 kilograms. "Dr. Cross," Velton said, his voice strained with the effort of staying calm. "That is a Class 5 predator. It has killed trained security teams. Why are you—" "Having coffee," Emma finished. "It was hungry, so I fed it. Seemed like the polite thing to do." The Shadow Stalker had lost interest in the conversation. It padded over to the kitchen's main window and pressed its face against the transparent aluminum, looking out at the night landscape. Its breath fogged the surface, and it seemed to be watching something moving in the distance. More footsteps. Approached. The distinctive shuffle-click pattern of Dr. Tallis, the station's insectoid xenobiologist. She appeared in the doorway, froze for a moment, as her compound eyes processed the scene, then began making rapid clicking sounds that Emma recognized as her species' equivalent of nervous laughter. "Most interesting," Tallis said, her translator, rendering the clicks into standard galactic. "The creature shows no signs of aggressive behavior. Its posture indicates curiosity rather than hunting instincts." "It ate about 2 kilograms of synthesized beef," Emma reported. "Seemed to enjoy it." Dr. Velton looked between Emma and the Shadow Stalker with growing bewilderment. "This situation is completely against protocol. I should contact the security team, have the creature tranquilized and relocated." The Shadow Stalker turned away from the window and fixed its amber gaze on Velton. The commander fell silent immediately. There was something in those eyes, not hostility exactly, but a clear understanding that the discussion involved its immediate future, and it had opinions about that. "I don't think it wants to be relocated," Emma observed. "And honestly, it hasn't done anything wrong. It got into the station somehow, probably when the security systems went offline. But all it's done since then is follow me around and eat dinner." Tallis moved closer, her scientific curiosity overriding her caution. "The bioluminescent patterns are fascinating. See how they pulse in response to our voices? I believe it's attempting to process our communication patterns." As if responding to her words, the Shadow Stalker's patterns shifted to a rapid, complex sequence that reminded Emma of a light-based Morse code. The creature was definitely trying to communicate something, though none of them could understand. "What?" "It's trying to talk to us," Emma realized. "Look at how it responds when we speak. It knows we're intelligent and it's looking for a way to interact." Dr. Velton remained skeptical. "Even if that's true, we can't simply adopt a wild predator. The safety protocols exist for good reasons. This creature's species has a documented history of he was interrupted by an alarm from the station's external sensors." All three researchers turned to the nearest display screen, where a priority alert was flashing red. The perimeter detection system had identified multiple large contacts moving toward the station from the western forest. "Razor wings," Tallis identified, her compound eyes reflecting the alarm lights. "A full hunting pack. 12 individuals approaching from upwind." Emma had read about razor wings in the planet's predator database, flying carnivores with blade-sharp wing edges and a pack hunting strategy that could take down prey much larger than themselves. They were one of the few species that actively hunted the larger ground predators. The Shadow Stalker had gone rigid, its attention focused entirely on the alarm display. Its patterns were flashing in rapid, urgent pulses, and it was making a low, rumbling sound that seemed to come from deep in its chest. "It knows what those alarms mean," Emma said. "It recognizes the threat." Dr. Velton was already moving toward the communication panel. "I'll activate the emergency defenses. The automated laser grid should keep them away from the station." He pressed the activation sequence. Nothing happened. The display showed multiple system failures across the defensive network. The power surge, Emma realized. It must have damaged more than just the main grid. The laser systems are offline. Through the kitchen window, they could see shapes moving. In the darkness, angular forms that reflected the station's lights as they circled the building. The razor wings had arrived. The shadow stalker moved to the center of the room and sat down, facing the window. Its posture was alert, but not afraid. If anything, it seemed to be waiting for something. "What's it doing?" Dr. Velton asked. Emma watched. The creature's body language, remembering every nature documentary she'd ever seen about pack predators and territorial behavior. The shadow stalker wasn't preparing to run or hide. It was getting ready to defend. "I think," she said slowly, "it's about to earn its keep." The first razor wing struck the window with a screech that made all three researchers jump. The transparent aluminum held, but spiderweb cracks appeared across its surface. More impacts followed as the pack coordinated their attack. The shadow stalker rose to its feet, its bioluminescent patterns now blazing with bright, aggressive light. It looked at Emma for a moment, a look that seemed to say, "Stay inside," then padded toward the kitchen's exterior door. "It's going out there," Tallis observed with scientific fascination. "A lone predator against an entire razor-wing pack. Most illogical behavior for a survival-oriented species." Emma understood. The shadow stalker wasn't being illogical. It was being protective. "Open the door," she said to Dr. Velton. "Absolutely not. That creature could turn on us the moment it's finished with the razor wings." Emma walked to the door, control herself. "It just spent an hour in an enclosed space with us. If it wanted to hurt us, it would have done it already." She pressed the release. The door slid open, and the shadow stalker bounded into the night, its patterns blazing like a war banner as it charged toward the circling razor wings. The battle that followed was swift and decisive. Through the cracked window, they could see flashes of bioluminescent light and hear the sounds of the hunt, roars, screeches, and the wet sounds of predators doing what they did best. When silence returned, the shadow stalker came back. It was bleeding from several cuts, but it moved with the satisfied grace of a successful hunter. It sat down outside the door and looked at them expectantly. Emma opened the door again. The creature padded inside, went straight to its empty food plate, and looked at her hopefully. "I think," Emma said to her stunned colleagues, "we're going to need a bigger food synthesizer." 3 weeks had passed since Emma's first encounter with the shadow stalker. The creature, whom she had started calling Midnight during her daily reports, had become a regular fixture around Research Station Omega-7. Every evening, just after the day shift ended, it would emerge from the forest and settle down near the station's main entrance. Every morning, just before dawn, it would disappear back into the wilderness. The routine had become as predictable as Emma's coffee schedule. She would finish her geological surveys, head to the kitchen, and prepare 2 meals, one for herself and a larger portion of synthesized protein for her unusual companion. They would eat together in comfortable silence, with Midnight investigating different parts of the station while Emma worked on her research. Dr. Velton had filed 17 different incident reports with the consortium headquarters, each one describing the ongoing security situation and requesting immediate evacuation of the research team. The responses had been surprisingly consistent. As long as no personnel were injured and research continued normally, the situation was to be monitored but not actively disrupted. The truth was, research had never gone better. With Midnight patrolling the station's perimeter, other dangerous creatures had stopped approaching the facility. The team's daily excursions could now extend further from the base, knowing that their route home was secure. Even the skittish Thaxian geologists had started working longer hours, confident that something large and protective was watching over them. Dr. Tallis had become fascinated with documenting Midnight's behavior. Her daily observation logs filled dozens of data files, tracking everything from the creature's bioluminescent communication patterns to its apparent ability to understand human work schedules. Most remarkable adaptation, she had noted during yesterday's staff meeting. Subject demonstrates clear recognition of individual humans, shows preferential treatment toward Dr. Cross, and actively modifies its hunting patterns to avoid interference with station operations. Emma had to smile at the clinical language. Tallis was describing what any pet owner would recognize as basic domestication behaviors, but the insectoid scientist was treating it like a groundbreaking discovery in xenobiology. Tonight felt different, though. Midnight had arrived earlier than usual, and its bioluminescent patterns were showing more agitation than Emma had seen since the razor wing incident. The creature kept pacing between the kitchen and the main entrance, occasionally pressing its face against the windows to scan the darkness outside. "Something's bothering you," Emma said, setting down a plate of fresh protein. "What's got you worried?" Midnight approached the food but didn't eat immediately. Instead, it looked at Emma with those expressive amber eyes and made a series of low rumbling sounds. Not quite growls, but not the contented purring she had grown used to either. Dr. Velton appeared in the kitchen doorway, his expression more serious than usual. "Dr. Cross, we've received a priority communication from Consortium headquarters. A security team is en route to address our situation." Emma felt a cold knot form in her stomach. "What kind of security team?" "Military contractors," Velton admitted reluctantly. "Species specialists with experience in large predator control. They'll arrive tomorrow morning with full authorization to resolve the matter as they see fit." The meaning was clear enough. Someone in the consortium bureaucracy had decided that Midnight posed an unacceptable risk, despite 3 weeks of peaceful coexistence. The security team would arrive with tranquilizer weapons, containment equipment, and probably orders to relocate, or eliminate the threat. Midnight seemed to sense the change in mood. The creature moved closer to Emma, its massive head brushing against her shoulder in what had become a familiar gesture of affection. Its patterns shifted to the slow, steady pulse that indicated contentment. It was trying to comfort her. "There has to be something we can do," Emma said. "The research data clearly shows that Midnight isn't dangerous to humans. Dr. Tallis has documented weeks of non-aggressive behavior." "The contractors won't be interested in research data," Velton replied. "They have their orders, and their methods are efficient." Emma scratched behind Midnight's ears, feeling the creature lean into the contact. Over the past 3 weeks, she had grown genuinely fond of her unusual companion. More than that, she respected it. Midnight was intelligent, protective, and had shown remarkable adaptability in learning to coexist with the human research team. "What if we could prove that Midnight is more than just a domesticated predator?" she asked. "What if we could demonstrate actual intelligence, problem-solving ability, maybe even tool use?" Dr. Tallis clicked her mandibles together, the insectoid equivalent of excitement. "Intriguing possibility. The consortium has strict protocols regarding the treatment of sentient species. If we could establish cognitive benchmarks..." "It's worth trying," Velton agreed, "though the time frame is extremely limited." Emma looked at Midnight, who was watching the conversation with obvious interest. The creature's head tilted when she made direct eye contact, and its patterns shifted to what she had learned indicated curiosity. "Can you understand us?" she asked quietly. "I mean, really understand, not just respond to tone and body language?" Midnight considered the question for a long moment. Then, deliberately, it walked to the food synthesizer and pressed its nose against the activation panel. The machine beeped in response, and the creature stepped back, looking at Emma expectantly. "It knows how to operate the synthesizer," Tallis observed, her compound eyes reflecting the machine's status lights. "But that could be simple learned behavior." Emma had an idea. She walked to the main computer terminal and brought up a simple mathematical sequence, the first 10 prime numbers, displayed as a visual pattern on the screen. Midnight approached the display and studied it carefully. "This is a test of pattern recognition," Emma explained to the creature. "Can you show us what comes next?" Midnight stared at the screen for several minutes. Then it moved to a supply cabinet and used one claw to carefully drag out a collection of small equipment containers. It arranged them on the floor in a specific pattern. 11 objects, followed by 13, then 17. The next 3 prime numbers in the sequence. Dr. Velton's gills fluttered with surprise. That's not possible. It would require abstract mathematical reasoning. It gets better, Emma said, feeling a surge of hope. She brought up a new display showing a simple maze puzzle. Can you trace the solution path? Midnight studied the maze, then walked to Emma's personal toolkit and selected a laser pointer. It activated the device with careful manipulation of its claw and traced a path through the maze on the screen. The optimal solution, completed in under 30 seconds. Tool use, Talus whispered. Deliberate selection of appropriate implements for problem-solving tasks. This exceeds the cognitive requirements for protected sentient status. Emma felt tears of relief starting in her eyes. Midnight, you beautiful genius. I think you just saved your own life. The creature looked at her with what she could swear was satisfaction. Its patterns shifted to a warm golden glow, and it made the deep purring sound that had become her favorite part of their evening routine. Dr. Velton was already moving toward the communication console. I need to contact Consortium headquarters immediately. If we can present this data before the security team arrives... There's more, Emma realized. She turned to Midnight. Show them the gift. Midnight padded out of the kitchen and returned. A few minutes later, carrying something in its jaws. It placed the object carefully on the floor in front of Dr. Talus, a perfect crystal formation, unlike anything in the station's geological samples. Where did this come from? Talus asked, her scientific excitement overriding her caution as she examined the specimen. Emma smiled. Midnight's been watching my geological surveys. It understands what I'm looking for, and it's been collecting samples from places too dangerous for our equipment to reach. The crystal was beautiful. A complex lattice structure that seemed to generate its own internal light. It was exactly the kind of rare formation that justified the entire research mission, and it had been delivered by a creature that the Consortium had classified as a mindless predator. This changes everything, Dr. Velton said, his earlier skepticism completely gone. A sentient species that actively participates in scientific research? The Consortium will want to establish formal contact protocols, not eliminate the subject. Emma looked at Midnight, who was watching the excited scientists with obvious amusement. The creature had just demonstrated intelligence, tool use, mathematical reasoning, and scientific collaboration, all the hallmarks of a species worthy of protection and respect. I think, she said, scratching behind Midnight's ears one more. Time. We're going to need a completely different kind of security team. The security team arrived at dawn, exactly as Dr. Velton had predicted. 3 heavily armed contractors in full environmental suits, carrying enough tranquilizer equipment to stop a small army. Emma watched their transport ship land from the station's observation deck, Midnight sitting calmly beside her chair. The creature had been unusually quiet all morning, as if it understood that something important was about to happen. Its bioluminescent patterns pulsed in the slow, steady rhythm that Emma had learned indicated deep thought or concentration. They look serious, she said, watching the contractors unload their gear. Military-grade everything. Midnight made a soft rumbling sound and pressed its massive head against her shoulder. Emma could feel the creature's tension, but also something else. Trust. After 3 weeks of shared meals and quiet companionship, Midnight had learned to rely on her judgment. Dr. Velton's voice crackled over the intercom. Dr. Cross, please report to the main conference room. The security team leader wants to review the situation before proceeding. Emma stood up and scratched behind Midnight's ears. Stay here for now. Let me talk to them first. The creature's amber eyes followed her as she left the observation deck, Its patterns had shifted to the rapid, anxious flashing that indicated stress, but it remained seated as she had asked. The conference room felt crowded with the addition of 3 contractors in full gear. Their leader was a Corvan, a species bred for military service with thick gray skin and natural armor plating. His name tag read, Commander Thane. Dr. Cross, Thane said without preamble. I understand you've been in direct contact with the Predator. Can you verify its current location? He's in the observation deck, Emma replied, deliberately using a personal pronoun. And his name is Midnight. Commander Thane's expression didn't change. The creature's designation is Target Alpha. Our orders are to neutralize the threat with minimal disruption to research operations. Dr. Tallis stepped forward, her compound eyes reflecting the harsh conference room lighting. Commander, we have documented evidence that the subject demonstrates cognitive abilities consistent with sentient classification. Behavioral conditioning? Thane dismissed. Large predators can be trained to mimic intelligent responses. It doesn't change their fundamental nature. Emma felt her temper rising. Midnight solved mathematical puzzles, used tools, and actively participates in our research. That's not conditioning. That's intelligence. The creature attacked your facility, Thane pointed out, breached your security systems and entered the station. That behavior pattern indicates persistent threat assessment. He was hungry, Emma said firmly, and he's been protecting us ever since. The station hasn't had a single predator incident in 3 weeks. Commander Thane consulted a data pad. Temporary territorial behavior. The creature is using your facility as a hunting base. When local prey populations decline, it will expand its territory to include human targets. Dr. Velton cleared his throat. Commander, we've transmitted our observational data to Consortium headquarters. If you review the cognitive assessment protocols— My orders come from Predator Control Division, Thane interrupted. They supersede local research findings. Emma realized that logic and evidence weren't going to be enough. The contractors had arrived with predetermined conclusions and wouldn't be swayed by scientific data. She needed a different approach. I want to be present during your procedure, she said. Thane shook his head. Unnecessary civilian exposure to risk. You'll remain in the secure section until the operation is complete. The creature trusts me, Emma insisted. If you approach it without warning, it might react defensively. That could endanger everyone. The commander considered this. Acceptable. You'll accompany the team as a civilian consultant, but you follow orders without question. Emma nodded, though she had no intention of following orders that would harm. Midnight. Understood. 20 minutes later, the security team approached the observation deck in full tactical formation. Emma walked ahead of them, trying to project calm confidence despite the knot of anxiety in her stomach. Midnight was exactly where she had left him, sitting by the large windows and watching the sunrise. When he saw Emma approaching with armed strangers, his patterns shifted to bright warning colors. Easy, Emma said softly. They're here to meet you. Commander Thane raised his tranquilizer rifle. Dr. Cross, step away from the target. Wait, Emma said, moving between the weapon and Midnight. Give me 5 minutes to demonstrate his intelligence. Negative. The longer we delay, the more dangerous this becomes. Emma turned to face the commander directly. You said yourself that large predators can be trained. If Midnight responds to my commands, that proves he's not an immediate threat, right? Thane lowered his weapon slightly. 2 minutes. Emma walked to the observation deck's main computer terminal. Midnight. Remember the mathematical sequence from yesterday? The creature approached the terminal and pressed several keys with careful claw movements. The display showed a series of complex geometric patterns, the next progression in the mathematical sequence they had worked on together. Tool manipulation, one of the contractors observed. That's advanced cognitive behavior. Emma brought up a new display showing the station's floor plan. Midnight. Can you show them the safest route to the geological storage area? Without hesitation, Midnight traced a path through the facility layout using the cursor controls. The SOST route avoided areas with delicate equipment and led directly to the secured storage bay. It understands facility layout and navigation protocols, the second contractor noted. Sir, this exceeds standard Predator behavioral parameters. Commander. Thane was studying his datapad with growing uncertainty. The cognitive assessment scores are unusually high. Emma sensed an opportunity. Midnight. Show them the gift collection. The creature padded to a storage alcove and returned with a carefully organized collection of crystal specimens. Each one was a perfect example of the rare formations the research team had been searching for. Midnight placed them in a precise grid pattern, sorted by size and geological characteristics. Scientific collaboration, Dr. Tallis whispered. It's been conducting independent research. Commander Thane lowered his weapon completely. This is outside my operational parameters. I need to contact headquarters for revised instructions. Commander, Emma said quietly, what if I told you that Midnight chose to stay here? That he could leave any time but returns every night because he wants to be part of our research team? As if responding to her words, Midnight walked to the observation deck's exterior door and pressed the release control. The door slid open, revealing the vast wilderness beyond. Then, deliberately, the creature walked back to Emma's side and sat down. The message was clear. I could leave whenever I want. I choose to stay. Commander Thane stared at the open door, then at the massive predator sitting calmly beside the human researcher. In 15 years of predator control operations, I have never seen behavior like this. Because you've never encountered a species like this before, Emma said. Midnight isn't just intelligent. He's choosing to interact with us as equals. The commander spoke quietly into his communication device for several minutes. When he finished, his expression had changed completely. New orders from headquarters, he announced. We're to establish formal contact protocols and begin preliminary negotiations for a research partnership agreement. Emma felt tears of relief starting in her eyes. Partnership agreement? The consortium wants to know if there are others like him. If we're looking at an undiscovered sentient species rather than simple predators. Midnight seemed to understand the change in mood. His patterns shifted to the warm golden glow that Emma had learned indicated happiness, and he made his deep, purring sound. There's something else, Commander Thane added. Headquarters is offering you a permanent position as liaison officer. They want someone who understands the species to coordinate future interactions. Emma looked at Midnight, who was watching her with obvious anticipation. What do you think, partner? Want to make this official? The creature walked to the computer terminal one more time and entered a single word on the display. Yes. 6 months. Later, Research Station Omega-7 had been expanded into a full diplomatic facility. Emma's office overlooked the station's new wing, where a family of shadow stalkers had taken up residence as the first officially recognized sentient species to be discovered in over a century. Midnight had become something of a celebrity, featured in scientific journals across the galaxy as proof that intelligence could evolve in unexpected forms. But to Emma, he was still the hungry creature who had wandered into her kitchen one dark night, looking for nothing more complicated than a decent meal and some friendly conversation. The story had become legend throughout the consortium. The human who offered breakfast to a predator in the dark and discovered a new form of consciousness in the process. It was cited in diplomatic schools as an example of how first contact should be handled, with patience, respect, and the simple recognition that intelligence comes in many forms. Emma still worked the night shift, though now she had company. Midnight would settle beside her desk each evening, occasionally helping with research or simply enjoying the quiet companionship. Sometimes other members of his species would join, them slowly learning to trust the strange creatures who communicated with sound instead of light. And every morning, just before dawn, Emma would make coffee and prepare breakfast for however many guests had decided to stay the night. It had become the most important meal of the day, a simple ritual that had changed the galaxy's understanding of what it meant to be intelligent and what it meant to be human. The predator who had attacked in the dark had taught them all something profound. Sometimes the most meaningful discoveries begin with the smallest acts of kindness. Sometimes changing the universe is as simple as offering breakfast to a stranger.